Royal selection. First contact after one Emilia. Victory! In the early morning, what rang out loud in the mansion's yard was the shout that had become part of her daily routine. Raising both hands energetically above her head, she called out from the pit of her stomach, full of spirit. That way, vitality would fill every corner of her body, all the way to the tips of her hands and feet, and her drowsiness would vanish far away. She wasn't very good at getting up early, so this effect of pushing her sleepiness away was a huge help. Given her position, going out in front of everyone with sleepy eyes was really not good. Emilia. It's completely become a habit. Stretching her back with a sense of achievement and satisfaction at having finished, Emilia murmured that, her silver hair, gathered loosely today, letting the sunlight shine through it. The radio calisthenics that had become their morning habit were a fun ritual for starting the day feeling good. Thought up by the black-haired boy who worked as a servant at the mansion, Natsuki Subaru. At first, Emilia had been the only one joining Subaru, but before she knew it, everyone working at the mansion, and even the villagers living nearby, had started taking part, and the number of participants was steadily growing. Of course, they couldn't manage to gather in a big group for radio calisthenics every single day. But even so, Emilia had heard a delightful report from Petra, who was reliably growing as a new maid, that even when Subaru wasn't around, everyone in the village was voluntarily doing them. Emilia, I've completely gotten to where I can go all the way through even without Subaru's calls now. Emilia's eyes softened in contentment, but beside her there were none of the usual figures of Subaru, who should have been doing radio calisthenics together with her, nor of his partner, Beatrice. At the moment, the two of them were out on a job as a spirit arts user and his contracted spirit, calming the micro-spirits in the region who were causing trouble. Because of that, Subaru and the others had been away from the mansion for about 2 days, and for those 2 days, Emilia had been doing radio calisthenics by herself. To be honest, she felt a little lonely, but she had heard that they would safely finish the job and be back today, so that lonely feeling was about to come to a pause. And right then, she went, realizing something. A moment ago, Emilia had thought of Subaru in her heart as the boy who worked as a servant at the mansion, but that wasn't right. Right now, Natsuki Subaru was Emilia. My knight, after all. Every time, feeling her own cheeks grow warm as she said that out loud made Emilia think that was something very, very happy. 2. It had been about a month since Natsuki Subaru's investiture as a knight, and the ceremony in which he had also been granted the position of first knight to Emilia, a royal candidate. In the uproar right before the investiture ceremony, their base of operations, the mansion, had burned down, and they had been kept busy dealing with those who wished to relocate from the now-opened sanctuary. So this past month had been hectic to say the least. But that too had finally begun to settle down, and Emilia had just started to slowly feel the day-to-day changes, the differences between how things had been and how things would be from now on. First and foremost, the biggest change for Emilia was Petra. Lady Emilia, you look really happy. Being told that, Emilia involuntarily blinked in confusion, her eyes going round. The one who had stopped her in the corridor and smiled at her like that was Petra, whose brand-new maid uniform still looked as if it sparkled. Tilting her head at that happy-looking description which she herself had not noticed, Emilia said, Emilia, was I really looking that happy? I was just walking down the hallway, though. Petra, but the way you were walking was all bouncy, and you were humming. It was a song I have never heard before, but you were humming, right? Emilia, you have never heard it. I heard Sword Demon Love Song is super famous, though. Petra, that was Sword Demon Love Song. Now that you mention it, I think it might have been. As Petra pressed her hands together in front of her chest, saying she remembered now, Emilia also nodded with a that's right. Even so, she still had no sense at all that she had been that cheerful. But if she had looked that buoyant even through Petra's eyes, Petra, you are happy that Subaru and Beatrice Jan are coming back too, Lady Emilia. Emilia, yeah, I am. Because Subaru said that once this job is over, he'll bring back some really interesting stories as a souvenir. A promise? I figured Subaru's more likely to really do it if we don't make it a promise, so I did not make him promise, but... Petra, I understand. Even I cannot really take Subaru's side on that one. The fact that Subaru was a habitual promise breaker was already common knowledge within Emilia's camp. It was not as if Emilia had gone out of her way to spread that around, but the fact that even Petra knew it probably meant Subaru's broken promises were not limited to just his dealings with Emilia. Emilia, that is something someone has to scold him for, right? Petra, yes, that is right, but if anyone is going to scold him, it has to be you, Lady Emilia, because Subaru is Lady Emilia's knight. Emilia, Petra, Lady Emilia, Emilia. No, it's fine. I'm totally okay, really. Yeah, you're right. Subaru is my knight, so if he does something bad, I have to be the one to scold him. Yeah, leave it to me. Petra, that is so powerful. Thumping a fist against her own chest, Emilia accepted that role with great vigor in front of Petra. After that, she parted ways with Petra as the girl went back to work, and Emilia also went on with the rest of her morning routine, chatting with the micro-spirits she was contracted with, and taking care of her hair and skin every day as she had promised Puck. By the time she was finished with those, it was time for breakfast, and everyone gathered in the dining hall to eat together. Garfield, ooh, Lady Emilia, that's amazing. You can eat pepper today, huh? Emilia, I was eating pepper. No way, it's the green devil. Ram, Garf, kindly do not say unnecessary things. Lady Emilia had just absent-mindedly gotten rid of the pepper, the green devil. Otto, why are you looking at me while saying green devil? My clothes being green have nothing at all to do with the bitterness of pepper. With things going like that, the lively meal went on, and even as she trembled at the fact that she had eaten pepper, Emilia very much enjoyed the dining table she shared with everyone in the camp. Originally, Roswell Manor had a custom of everyone gathering to eat together, but it was only after Subaru joined them that things had become this boisterous. Back when she had lived in the forest with just Puck, Puck's skillful talk had often made her laugh, but even then she would not have called it lively. Now there was not a moment without laughter, even during meals. Frederica, Lady Emilia, you were very focused today. Drawing the results of the morning's studies closer at hand and checking over the contents, Frederica offered those words of praise. Hearing them, Emilia patted her chest in relief with a thank goodness. Unless she had duties as a royal candidate or some special business, Emilia spent most of her day at her desk facing books and documents, devoting herself to learning the knowledge she lacked. The wind hour in the morning was for studying politics, the legal system, and history, and she had just had that work graded by Frederica. The reason Emilia had felt so relieved at the grading results was, of course, that she was happy to have her efforts acknowledged, but beyond that, Frederica. Now you can go to greet Subaru-sama, and the others when they return at the fire hour. Emilia, yeah, making sure I don't neglect my studies was the condition Roswell gave me, after all. Frederica, the master really does think up such spiteful things as well, is what I would like to say, but… Emilia, no, it's important. Just because I am all fidgety doesn't mean it's okay to put important things off. At Frederica's words, her brows slightly drooping, Emilia shook her head and answered like that. Roswell certainly was mean-spirited, and he had actually done mean things, but even when his phrasing was mean, he was often saying things that were correct. This condition was one of those cases as well. Going out to greet Subaru, and the others without doing what she was supposed to do, would have been kind of strange. Frederica, you seem to be enjoying yourself, Lady Emilia. Emilia, Frederica said the same thing Petrachan told me this morning, and at breakfast Ram also said I was spacing out. What kind of face am I making? Frederica, let me see, a face that is eagerly waiting for very happy news, perhaps. Emilia, and that still looks happy. Frederica, waiting can also be a joyful time after all. Seeing Frederica's smile as she brought a hand to her mouth, Emilia somehow felt convinced. Now that she thought about it, back when she had been living in the forest, if she got her hands on a fruit they could rarely obtain, waiting for it to ripen fully and sweetly had been fun. Maybe this was the same thing. Emilia, I think I get that. Subaru seems to really like apple too. Frederica, I feel as though your conclusion may be a little off, but even so, once again, I am very happy that you were able to welcome Subaru-sama as your knight. Emilia, Frederica, you also wanted Subaru to become a knight. Frederica, Rather than that, I am happy that you were able to welcome a knight, Lady Emilia. Previously, you consulted me once about your own knight, did you not? Emilia. Right, you're right, I remember. Frederica, you said you wanted someone who was kind and would properly talk about their feelings. Frederica. Why, yes, that is what I said. You remember it in such detail, but you do not need to worry about me. I am not someone who stands in a position to have a knight. Her cheeks faintly flushed. Frederica diverted the flow of the conversation away from herself. The face she made as she did so felt a little similar to how she looked when she was dealing with Clind, who had been coming and going more often since the mansion had been moved. But there was no opening to bring that up. Instead, Frederica gently touched her own chest and continued, Frederica. At that time, I was the one who accompanied you to the royal capital, but when you met the other candidates and their knights, you looked very uneasy, Lady Emilia. I regretted that I could not properly stay by your side in that uneasiness. Emilia, I do not think you could not do it properly, or anything like that, though. Frederica, it is what I thought myself, that there were more things I could have done. So I am grateful that Subaru-sama became your knight, and more than that, Emilia, more than that, Frederica. I wanted to tell you, Lady Emilia, that you did very well. Hearing Frederica continue like that, Emilia caught a small breath and lowered her gaze. The slow heat that welled up at the back of her eyes was proof that Frederica's feelings had pierced her heart. It was not as if she had been holding onto feelings of pain or sadness or anything like that. But it was true that Emilia had been uneasy, and more than that, she had not really been able to grasp it at all. The idea that she could have an absolute ally of her own, a first knight of her own, not at all. Emilia, but you know, it's amazing, Frederica. Taking a deep breath in and out, Emilia raised her face and began like that. Emilia, I was talking with Puck about what kind of knight would make me happy, and everything I was thinking of back then, Subaru fits all of it. Frederica. My, is that so? Would you tell me those conditions as well? Emilia. Sure. First, someone who laughs a lot, who can enjoy eating anything, who is hardworking, and who gets along with Beatrice and everyone in the mansion, see. That's all exactly Subaru, right? Frederica. Yes, truly. Subaru-sama is exactly like that. Emilia. And I wanted someone who would not be afraid of me, Fufu. I never imagined he would even be someone who would say he likes me. Frederica. Unthinkingly, as her cheeks warmed at that fact, Emilia's lips relaxed into a smile. Even those conditions she had just listed, when she had talked them over with Puck, she had thought she was being terribly greedy. At first, she had not really known what she wanted, but once she started thinking about it, the conditions had come out one after another, and Puck had laughed and called her a greedy girl. And yet Subaru had fulfilled all those conditions, even that very greatest wish of Emilia's, though in a slightly different form. Emilia, I am happy to have him say he likes me, but it makes me feel really restless somehow. Frederica, what do you do at times like that? Frederica, well, it is the same as between a knight and their lord. Emilia, what do you mean? Frederica, there are different ways of relating to each other in every case, so there is no single correct answer, something like that. Emilia, I see, so that is how it is. At Frederica's answer, Emilia nodded in agreement. The relationship between Emilia and Subaru was different from that of Crush and Ferris, from Anastasia and Julius, from Priscilla and Al, and from Felt and Reinhard as well. There was no one correct form there. Frederica's opinion was right on the mark. There was just one thing that she had only now started to feel uneasy about, and that was Emilia. The truth is, my knight was supposed to undergo Puck's strict screening, but since Puck is asleep, that part is not properly done yet. Frederica, in that case, when the Great Spirit wakes, I shall put in a word from me as well. I will tell him Subaru-sama is absolutely perfect. Emilia, Fufu, I am counting on you. With that promise from Frederica, such a reassuring ally, Emilia smiled back at her. 3 before lunchtime, Emilia left the new Roswell Manor and headed for the industrial city of Kostul, the nearest town, to pick up Subaru and the others. Her only companions on this deliberately a little bit lonely adventure were Beatrice and Patrash. Subaru had said he was thinking that chances for outings like this would increase from now on, and that was why they were doing it this way. but she remembered feeling just a little sad at the idea that there would be more times when they were apart. At any rate, when she went to their agreed meeting place at the appointed time he had given in his message, she spotted a dragon carriage bearing the crest of the House of Mathers on the busy main street, lined with stalls and crowded with people. In front of that dragon carriage stood a ground dragon with jet-black scales, and beside it, Subaru. "So here's the thing, old man. We just got back from a job. Long trip, and it was our very first job to boot, so we've got to celebrate with the very best appa you've got." "Right, Beatrice. Betty heard the appa from your stall are the best in town, in fact. Now we shall see whether you can live up to Betty's expectations, I suppose." Fruit seller. "Good grief, you two sure know how to fire a guy up, Kid and Missy." Even amid the bustle of the street, Emilia could pick out the backs of Subaru and Beatrice, standing out as they bantered like that. Subaru seemed to be negotiating with the owner of a fruit shop about something. When his profile came into her violet eyes, Emilia involuntarily blinked in surprise and pressed a hand to her chest. She could feel warmth soaking through her whole body from her heart, which was softly beating, just a little more lively than usual. She understood it, and it was far too much for her to bear all by herself. "Emilia, excuse me, can I just say something?" Passerby. What is it?" Holding that feeling inside, Emilia stopped a passerby who just happened to be walking past beside her. To the man, who was not anyone she knew at all, Emilia pointed across the street. Then indicating Subaru standing over there, Emilia. "That over there, that's my knight." Passerby. I see. In that case, I wish you both happiness." Emilia. "Yes, thank you really much." The passerby looked confused for a moment, but Emilia smiled at his words of blessing and then broke into a run. She did feel a little bad about leaving him standing there gaping, but Emilia's heart was bright and clear. "Emilia, my night is amazing." Saying that just as she had once thought long ago when she imagined her ideal night, Emilia ran with a spring in her step toward her very first night, waiting for her on the far side of the street. End.